Hello all my YouTube data people. In today's video we are going to be going through a beginner's course, full beginner's guide to Power BI. So top to bottom, starting with the basics and going all the way out to publishing a report. So within the course we're going to have no data within our model, starting out with a fresh blank file, and by the end of the course we will have published a full Power BI report, understand how to distribute it, understand how to build the model, how to create some of those calculations that we use, how to create those visuals. So we'll be taking it top to bottom to go through the entire process of how to get started in Power BI. If you do find this helpful, this is a course that I do have published out on my website. I have a bunch of other courses out there as well, super long form content to kind of get you more in the weeds of Power BI to help increase that expertise and help increase the value that you provide when you use your Power BI models. Definitely check out my website, Learn-PowerBI.com. But all right, that is going to be the intro, and hopefully you guys enjoy the course and find some value in it.
All right, so getting into what Power Query is. So if you open up your Power BI desktop, the first place that you're going to go to on pretty much any project that you do is going to be the Power Query window. The Power Query window is going to be this Transform Data button. So up in the Home tab of your new file, it's going to be in that Transform Data button. If you click on the drop down, just click on that Transform Data button, or you can just click on the Transform Data tile up top. When you click on that, it will open up your Power Query Editor window. So this is where you can do all of those connecting to new data sources and all of those transformations that we mentioned on the last video. So going into kind of what this Power Query does and what some of these buttons are up here. So up on the Home tab, we've got all of our data sources, right? So we can connect to data sources. We can save some data sources to connect them quickly. We can enter some new blank data if we just want to enter just a blank table or some static stuff. We can throw in a blank table. We can manage our data source settings, right? So a whole bunch of different options up here within Power Query just to manage our data as it comes in. So before it's even in our data model, we're able to transform our data and work on our data pretty much at the source. So before we load our data, what we're doing in Power Query Editor is we're running processes or transformations on our data before it's even in the model. So before it touches anything within a data model or within the Power BI file, we're doing some manipulations or transformations or something to the data. So that's what Power Query, that's what these steps are for. Or if we just load the data in, we just load it in and no transformations are needed, nice and clean, right? So we'll go through some of those transformations because usually our data doesn't come through nice and clean. Most people don't have that nice luxury. But so again, just some more options up here with Power Query. Again, we've got the Home tab, and then again on Transform, we can do these are all the different transform options we have. We can transpose by different rows. We'll go through some of these in another video later on as well. But a whole bunch of options for our Power Query setups, right? So that we can clean our data however we need to. So let's go ahead and get into how we can connect to some of our data and how we can organize what is going to be within our Power Query window. So the way that we connect to data sources, up on our Power Query Editor window, what we're going to do is on our Home tab, on our New Sources, we're going to click on this New Sources window. When we click on this window, what we're going to get is our get data option. So again, going back to what I said in our first video, whole bunch of options to connect to, right? We don't care about all of these. We're just going to focus on the CSVs for now, just connecting to a data source, right? But just for your knowledge, look how many there are, right? There's a whole lot of data sources that you can connect to. And again, there are also custom connectors if yours doesn't happen to be in here. But they have a whole bunch in here. But what we're focusing on is just the simple CSV and text files. So we will just go ahead and connect to our data here. So what we're going to be connecting to is just some demo data here. Let's find it. So we're going to be connecting to some sales order data, right? So we've got 5 tables in here. We've got a client table, employee table, locations, product, and sales. So let's go ahead and open one of our tables. So when we select that CSV file, this is going to be the window that you're brought to, right? It's just essentially like a little sample window of what you're going to be looking at. It's essentially just a little preview. Most of the time you can just always push OK. But you do have a delimiter. Maybe if your delimiter isn't a comma and you've got another delimiter, you can set that on that setting there. Go ahead and push OK in there. And so here you go. So now you can see that we are connected to our Excel file, right? So this is going to be just a one-to-one to our Excel file or our CSV file that is clients within that folder. It's just a preview of the first 1,000 rows. We've only got 250 in here, so it's just going to give us 250 rows of our client's data. But what we want to do with this is if, let's say, we start connecting to a whole lot of tables and our model starts getting really big, right? We want to make sure that the foundation of our model stays really organized because Power BI models can grow very quickly. So we want to make sure that we're very stringent about our organization on the front end of our model so that we can keep it organized whenever we start developing in 2, 3, 4 months once the model starts growing and getting big and we're connecting to 50, 60, 100 different data sources. We're organized, we know where all of our stuff is, right? We've got to make sure that the model stays organized so that we can keep building on top of it and managing it and it doesn't get out of control. So a great way to organize these data sources is just name them, just very simply, right? So this is going to be a lookup table, dimension table, whatever you want to call it. I usually go with lookup and fact tables. So it's going to be a lookup client table, right? So let's just go ahead and name it lookup client. Let's go ahead and grab our other tables. Let's go ahead and grab employees. Go ahead and load that in. Rename it again. Look up employees and just go down the list. So again, just go into that new sources, CSV, selecting the file, and pushing OK. Go in to rename all of these. And then once we rename them, we want to follow up on renaming with then grouping them. So these are our lookup tables, so let's group them into our lookup tables, right? So again, we've just grouped them and got them nice and neatly organized. We were still missing one more table, so let's go out and grab our fact table. We've got our fact sales table here. Let's go ahead and label you, and you are not in this group, so let's move you to a new group. Fact tables, voila. So there we go. So now we've got our two lookup table and fact table groups. So we are all organized and ready to go within our data. So that is very simple how you can connect to your Excel files, CSV files, or really any files or data sources out there within Power BI. Just click on Power Query Editor, go to a new source, type it in, grab the data source, type in your credentials, and there you go. You've got your data connected. And then once you get it organized, you are ready to pretty much go. So we will go ahead and go over some simple transformations on our next one, and then we'll go ahead and get our data loaded in and keep going forward. All right, so what we're going to go through here is a bit of a transform example. So a pretty crazy Excel file, right? How do we transform this guy into a reportable table? So just going to showcase some of the transformations that Power BI offers and how we can pretty much just kind of clean up, like, look at this, any ugly Excel file into just something nice and reportable. Right, so kind of the premise of this Excel file is this is a system that data is held in. This is a targets file, so system that is housing targets, but that system only export that data within this certain ugly format, right? So something that is very not helpful to report on within Excel. I'm sure we could fix it up in Excel, but why bother? It's very complicated and hard to do. Just put it in Power BI and clean it up really quickly. So again, what this file comes out with is it comes out with an ID, so an employee ID, and then just that month that that employee has their target value set for, right? So it's very, very unreportable friendly. And then on top of that, what these asterisks are is every time somebody has a goal from the previous month, it's going to continue out that same goal. So these asterisks is just continuing the same value from the previous month, right? So pretty tricky file to work with. But what we are able to do with Power BI is we're able to make it into this nice and neat employee ID, month that their goal is, and then that goal value, right? So we'll just walk through kind of these steps that we apply here. We'll go through all of these together to make sure that we can transform this file into something that's usable within our Power BI reports. So what we would want to do is go again to new source. We're going to go ahead and grab this file again. Let's go find this guy. All right, there it is. So let's connect to this file. And so once we connect to it, we can see that we've already promoted headers and changed our data type. I usually don't like to keep this data type change because sometimes the AI isn't all that great with Microsoft's data type automatic data type adjustment. So typically I'll delete that, but I'll usually keep the promoted header step. So over here on this right side, these are the steps that we're applying throughout our query. So again, what I said in that first video about the steps that we're applying to our data before it's even in our model, that's what these steps are, right? So all of this data, so this is the original data file, right? But this data file never makes it into our model. This is what makes it into our model, right? So that's kind of what these steps do, is it's a flow from top to bottom of what we're changing and transforming within that data and what our end file is going to look like. So let's go ahead and walk through how to transform this file and what some of those steps can do and how we can go through it. So what we want to do is just get our employee ID with the month and the value. Because that's what we want. That's how we want our data reportable, right? We want a single date column, going back to how we want to think about our Power BI reports now. Instead of a single cell, we want to think about it as columns and rows, right? So we want our date within a single column so that we can have our values of a date be related to a date table. So we want those dates in a single column, and then those values associated with that date in that associated column with it, tied to its ID. So again, we go from all of these files that are over here, all of these over to just 3 columns: ID, date, value. And so the way that we do that is we want to take our employee value and we want to have it selected, and in our transform tab we want to click on unpivot columns and we want to go to unpivot other columns. So once we do that, we can see that there we go. Now here are our 3 columns. So we've transformed all of those dates into a single column of dates for each employee. So every employee now has a single column of dates for all of those dates that were in columns, now with their values associated with it as well. And then the neat thing about this file was, since everything was organized as sequentially from the furthest away date out until the closest date, or furthest away date, it was furthest future date, sorry, it was sequentially ordered when you unpivoted it, right? So now you can see that it's January, February, March, April, May, June, July, right? Even though they're not actually dates, that transformed worked nicely, and we can probably use that to our advantage down the road. So what we want to do next is we want to replace some values so that we can clean up our dates, because our dates right now, they don't look nice and clean, right? We've got an equals and then some quotes. Not very helpful. We can't make that a date yet. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and click this column, and we're going to want to, again, transform this, but by replacing some values. So what the value is that we're going to replace, we're going to look for the equal sign, double quotes, and we're going to replace it with nothing. And then there you go. You can see that that equal sign and double quotes was removed from the front of that column. There's still a double quote at the end, so let's go ahead and do that one more time. Replace values, replace double quotes with nothing. Okay, and there we go. Now we can see that our dates look like they are good to go. We can quickly do a check, Scroll through here. Here are dates. They are looking all good. If you want to load up some more, you can load everything. All of our dates are looking good though. So to change the data type over to a date now, since all of our dates are ready for a date data type, go ahead and click on the column little drop down in the top left where its little format data type is, and we can select date. And there you go. Now we can see its date value is a little calendar, and it's switched over to date values. So perfect. We are making progress here. Now what we want to do is focus on our values. We want to make sure that our values are properly showing now. So all of these blank values, we don't want the blanks. Blanks mean no goal, no target, right? So let's go ahead and filter out blanks. So if we click on that value column, click on that drop down and unselect blanks. So on the right side, again, you can see that this is now the step that we're on, and we've unfiltered for blanks. So let's go back and just kind of follow our steps here again. So we got our source data, promoted the headers. These were 2 default steps. I didn't do anything but connect to the source data. Then what we did was unpivoted that ID column. So we brought all of these dates into 2 more columns, their value with the date. And then we replaced some values, so we cleaned up our date column. And now we have filtered out blanks from our value, right? So now we're starting to look a little bit cleaner. We've got a single date value with a single value for each employee with no blank values. Now we just need to figure out how to clean up this star, right? How do we apply that same value from the previous month to its future month? So a good way that we can do that is there's another function for fill down. What we want to do on this values is we want to again click on this column and go to replace values, and we want to replace the star this time, and let's go ahead and just replace it with nothing. And once we do that, we can now do another step to fill down. So what this fill down is going to do, so all of these blank values from row 13 all the way down to 105 within the data. So if we go back to our star, so row 13 to 105, we can see that there are asterisks all the way through this data. So what that means, again, going back to our source data, what that export means is it's the same value of the previous month. So all of these asterisks should be that same $27,000 month, right? That same $27,777 month, all the way down to column 105. And then after 106 down to 109, it should be 8333. And so what that fill value does is it does exactly that. So if we go back to our blanks and we go to fill down, oh, sorry, instead of blank we need to fill it with null. I apologize. Let's try this again. Let's delete you. Let's go replace value. We are replacing with null, sorry, not blank. And then now we have a null instead of a blank. And then now when we fill down, we can see that we go from row 13, so that blank or null value, down to 105 to that same, our asterisk is now a value. And then same thing with our 83. Right, so we can see that we filled down our value, so now we have each month having an actual value that we can report on. So nice. What else do we need to do to make this a reportable table? Really, the last thing that we would need to do is just change this value and change this value type, and then change their names, and we are all good to go with our transformations. Right, so if we make this a dollar value, let's name this goal value. Let's go with this one to month's goal. And there you go. We went from a very ugly, unreportable table into a very nice and neat, reportable, neat table that we can start reporting on our targets on now. We can include this on our model, create a date relationship, and we have targets to now report against. Right, so again, just a quick sample of what model transformations and Power Query Editor has the capability of doing. Very, very high level overview, just a quick sample of a pretty nice, nifty little trick that Power Query offers. Hopefully that was helpful. we'll go into Power Query. I have a whole course on Power Query, so that will be coming. But hopefully that was helpful, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks. Okay, so the next thing with Power Query we're going to be going over next is we are going to be going over how to do a date table. So within Power Query, we have the option to create a date table. Or within Power BI, we have the option of creating date tables. What our date tables do is it's essentially the table that we're going to relate all of our other fact table dates to, right? So any date that we want to filter by will be ending up filtered by our date table. And the way that we're going to make that work is that we just create it within M code. That's the language that creates all of our Power Query items. So all of our steps within our Power Query is created through M code. And then we're just going to take this date table M code and paste it into a Power Query blank edit. So this date code is a part of the resource pack for this course. So go ahead and download this M code. It's very simple, very basic, just simple copy and paste. So once we've got that code copied, back on our Power Query editor file on the new window, we'll go ahead and do blank query this time. So we're going to do a blank query, and all we want to do is just paste in what we just copied. So go ahead to blank query, and then in our home button, we're going to go to the advanced editor. In advanced editor, let's highlight everything and just paste what we copied initially. All right, so just go ahead and paste that full starting date table. Go ahead and push done. And then once we've got our date table code inserted, what this does for us is this creates a very in-depth query parameter or query function. So what we do here is we enter in some values, and when we invoke this date function, it will provide us a date table for the values that we've filled out. So let's say we want a date table starting from January 1st, 2020 all the way through the end of the year of the next year. So if we just set up these specifications and push invoke, what we would do is we would invoke a date table with just these dates. So 2 full years of daily dates on our date table, with a whole bunch of other columns as well in there, right? All of these other items are different columns, right? So we would have a whole bunch of other items to filter by. But the other benefits of this date table is we are also able to specify fiscal year starting months or some other values. So let's say we have a fiscal year that starts in June. So we want to start our fiscal year on the 6th of months of every year. We can specify that with this value. So this value down here is the month number the fiscal year starts. It starts in January if it's omitted. So if we put 6, our fiscal year will start in June. There's a fiscal year date column within our date table, so we can now slice by fiscal year dates as opposed to just a year, right? So again, it just unlocks very, very nice ease of use from our report viewers from just, okay, click on the fiscal year, done. And again, same kind of thing with the week numbers. If you've got a week that starts on, let's say your week starts on Sunday or Saturday, what's the default? So it starts on, where is it? Yeah, it starts on Monday. So let's say we want to start it on a Sunday. We can just enter 0 or enter 1, right? And then if we invoke that, our week starting for 1 will be on Monday. So it's super cool how we can set up this date table like that. Same kind of thing with holidays. Let's say we're doing some daily analysis on employee activity, and we want to show employee activity over every day, but our date table includes the weekends, so they're getting punished for not working on the weekends. We don't want to do that. So we can include holidays and dates or non-business days so that we can filter those out. And the way that we can do that is just choosing a column for a holiday and then invoking it, so then we can filter out those holidays, because again, the date table has a holiday filter. So let's go ahead and just invoke this date table, just a simple date table between these two date ranges with that date, or with our fiscal year start. So when we do that, again, we can see our date table has generated from that starting date that we specified all the way to the end. And then all of those other columns that I was talking about that our M code provided us, right? So when we copy that M code in, all we have to do is paste it in and then enter in those values. We get all of these date columns that we're able to filter on for our date table, right? So super nice, super nifty with how we can do that. And again, let's go ahead and organize this nice and neatly. Put these two in a new group. I'll usually move that up since it's on its own. And there we go. That is how we create a very in-depth and extensive date table, and we will probably not need another one for the rest of our model. Right, and that is it for Power Query Editor. So once you're kind of here, once you've got your data in and you've got a date table and you are ready to go, you can go ahead and load up your data. So in the top left corner, there's going to be that close and apply button. Whenever you push this close and apply button, we're going to start loading our data in. So this is when our data loads in. Once the data loads in, we can see it's all popped up right here. So now we have all of that data that we've loaded in, and we have access to it right here on our data pane. All right, let's go into how we do a Power BI model. So we're going to go into our model view and talk about how this page works now. In this video, we are going to be going over relationships, the introduction to what they are, and how necessary they are for building out your overall Power BI model, and how crucial it is to make sure you understand what the relationships do, so that if your relationships and model starts getting complicated, you can still work with it very easily and put very insightful measures on the page with very simple measures still, right? All of that goes back to your model, which is built around the relationships that you use in that model. So starting out, once you hit that close and apply button from Power Query, if you don't have this option turned off, what's going to happen is if you have tables that have related data to each other, Microsoft is going to try to assume some of those relationships and set those relationships by default right away when you load the data. So usually what I'll do is I will typically delete these relationships so that we can build our own, and so that I know exactly what type of model I'm working with, what my relationships are, and I'm not trying to understand something that Microsoft did for me, right? But for our purposes in this video, I'm just going to kind of go through what these relationships mean, and then we will go through setting up. I'll delete these and go through setting up our relationships on our own. So what these relationships mean within Power BI is our lookup. So this one-to-many type relationship this means that our lookup table has one location ID. So it is a unique location ID on our lookup table, and this is related through this arrow as a one-way relationship. So this arrow specifies it's a one-way relationship to this many location ID, right? So this table has a many with this star indication on the sales table, and this table has a 1. So unique locations IDs on the lookup tables to the many location IDs on the sales table. So that is how those relationships can be read. So it goes location ID filters sales table by a one-to-many relationship. Some of these other options that you can do for Power BI is, we won't get in too deep into what these do exactly, but just allows for a bunch of different options into what you can do with your model, right? So if you make this a two-way filter, you can make the cross direction single or going both ways. And when it's both ways, what that means is that each table will filter each other. So as opposed to only the location when it's a one-way relationship, so if we have a single way with this arrow going this way, what this means is that the location table will filter sales, but there's no arrow going from sales to location, so it won't filter upward. So if we try to filter by product ID on our sales table, it's not going to filter anything on our location table. But if we do want to do that for whatever reason, let's say our model needs to do that for some reason, we can go both ways, right? So that is an option. Another nice little thing that Microsoft has kind of worked on solving for us is we do have the many-to-many option, right? So we are able to now create many-to-many relationships. It's definitely not ideal. You, of course, want to have one-to-many relationships. That is how data is best designed and reported on. However, some instances that's just not an option. So instead of having to create that roundabout with an extra dimension table to relate the two tables together so that you can have one-to-manys on both sides of it, yada yada, Microsoft has solved it by allowing the option to have a many-to-many relationship, and then again by specifying what side of the relationships filter each other. So again, now we've got the stars on both sides specifying many to many, with the lookup table filtering the sales. So again, not ideal. We don't want to do that often, but it is an option. Sometimes you just need to do it, so it is an option. So that is the introduction to relationships. We will go through how to build these and how exactly it works in the next video. Hopefully that kind of gets you an base understanding of exactly what relationships are. In the next video, we'll go through how to set them up in our model. Getting into how to create a model of your own. So like I said, I typically delete all of those auto-generated Microsoft relationships if they get imported. So let's go ahead and delete these guys. Just go ahead and right click on those arrows and delete. Okay, so let me get this organized a little bit. So the way that I always think about my relationships is I think about my relationships top to bottom, right? So think about them as a waterfall. So your top tables, your lookup tables will filter your fact table. So very often, or across all BI kind of tools, the way that data is looked at is you've got dimension tables or lookup tables with lookup options or specific kind of locations or lookup data connected to fact tables, right? So those lookup tables or dimension tables contain all of that repetitive data that is then linked to those fact tables that have the daily activities that you want to report on. So the fact tables get filtered by those lookup tables, so that waterfall method top to bottom. So the way that I've organized this is we've got those lookup tables up top and the fact table on bottom. So let's go ahead and just relate some of these items to each other. So on that sales table, let me pop this open. We can see that we've got all of these IDs, right? So we've got each of the sale IDs, product IDs, employee ID. We've got all of those IDs, but we don't know what location it is. It's just location 25 or what client it is, right? So that's why we need to create those relationships to get that information onto our reporting page. And so our sales table relates to those lookup tables. So the way relationships are created, we will just simply drag and drop. So it's very user-friendly on the Power BI side. We will simply just click on the item that you want to relate to another thing and just drag and drop it. So we'll click on employee ID and we want to relate it to our fact table sales employee ID. So just drag it and drop it onto employee ID and then your arrow automatically creates. Same thing with the product and client and location. So you can see how that waterfall kind of starts to take shape, right? All of our arrows that we were talking on in that last video are pointing down. And we're only going to focus on one-to-many single-way relationships, right? That's going to be the majority of your relationships. You only need to know that other ways exist, right? So there are other ways to do it, but almost all the time you'll use one-to-many, one-way relationships, filtering your fact table by your lookup tables, right? So again, going back to that waterfall, this is how you want it to look, right? So all of your lookups are filtering your sales. And then so the last thing that I'll typically do is work with my date table. So date tables can be pretty tricky when setting up your dates within your relationships and model. Typically because there are going to be a lot of different dates that people like to use, right? There could be a sales order, a shipping date, a delivery date, a date of issue, a date of processing, right? There could be a bunch of different dates that people want to report on and filter by. So the date table is typically the last relationships that I'll add on to, and to make sure that the rest of my model works, and then that I can work out what type of date relationship I need to fit in there. But for our model, very simple, just date to an order date. So again, just drag and drop, and there we go. And the last step I will do is just collapse all of these guys. And now we know what is related. So our employee ID is related to our employee ID, product ID, client ID, location ID, right? So once you collapse everything, it will show you just kind of the items that are related to each other. So that is how you can set up your model within your relationship tab. Again, models are very important to understand exactly what's happening. So please, if you have any questions, ask in the forums, ask in the video questions. We will answer them and get you some answers to make sure you understand what models mean and how relationships work. Very crucial to understanding how to report and design Power BI reports.
Hopefully this was helpful, and we will get going on the next one. Just to recap the relationship section with a quick one, another just organization tip for models. Again, whenever you get kind of going into a really in-depth model or start getting a bunch of different tables, organization can start really playing a part in how you know what you're doing and keeping the model workable. So again, going back to how strict and organized I like to be, I'll always have the same format for all of my models when I'm creating a new relationship, creating a brand new model, or any type of model. I'll always have the same type of setup. So I'll always put the date in the top left. You're always going to need a date table, right? I just drag it all the way up to the top left, and I know that we're going to have relationships there, so I just put it up there. So I just ignore it, right? So I can kind of avoid it if I need to. It's not in the way, right? So I can just kind of, my date table exists, great, but I don't want to focus on it. I want to see what my actual model does. Then after that, once I've got kind of my date table up there, another item that I'll always do is, again, like I said in that last video, just make sure that those lookup tables are above the fact tables. So again, you know it's filtering what. So let's say we had some other layer to our employee table and we didn't want to flatten our employee table out, we would have another table on top of our employee table filtering by that, right? So if we had like managers or something on top of employees, we would have managers filter the employees, which filters the sales table, right? So you would want to kind of build that waterfall effect and make sure that you organize your relationship page in that way so that whenever anybody else looks at it, whenever you go back to it later on, you know exactly and very quickly what your model is doing, and you don't need to try to untangle it, because once you try to start untangling your model, you can quickly lose yourself within your Power BI report, or just development in general. So it's very crucial. Going back to that organization thing. We'll do a couple other organizational tips as we go here too, but just the organizing the model on this relationship page for design features, very crucial to understanding your model. So just make sure that you get this right when you're setting things up. Do it however you want. You don't need to put it in the top left, right? Put your date table wherever you want. Put your other tables wherever you want. If a star schema works better for you, right? Some people like doing this more, kind of like how Microsoft defaulted it to, right? So some people kind of like doing this, so they can see that all of the middle sales fact table is going to be your fact table, and everything else around it's going to filter it, right? Just whatever works best for you. Stick to kind of that. Figure out how you can best understand what your model is doing and a layout that works for you to understand, and then just keep repeating that whenever you start building your models so you can really ingrain into yourself what those relationships do. Hopefully that was a helpful organizational tip. Very helpful. I do it all the time. I'll see you guys on the next one. In this video, we are going over DAX, an introduction to DAX, what DAX is, how to write some basic DAX functions, and get you started on DAX. So what DAX is DAX is the data analysis expressions that Power BI uses as a coding language for creating calculations. So what DAX does is DAX is essentially the way that you write calculations in Power BI. So think of it as, if you're coming from an Excel world, think of it as that little formula bar in Excel. Instead of typing that Excel syntax, you're typing in DAX functions to essentially get you a value in your output, right? So we're going to be going through what those functions are, how to use DAX, and some different concepts around how DAX works. So getting into how to think about DAX. Again, in that first video that we mentioned, or that I did, we kind of talked about how we want to think about Power BI a bit differently than how we're used to if we're coming from Excel. With DAX, you want to think about data as a column or a table of data. DAX evaluates expressions or measures within columns and tables of data. We don't evaluate individual cells of data, right? So we can't evaluate this cell, so cell C, whatever row that is, right? We can't do that with DAX. What DAX does is it does a calculation based off of a table that you provide it and the function that you provide it, and then it will give you a value with whatever context is being used on the reporting page. And so I'll get into what exactly context is later on, but that's pretty much an introduction to DAX. It's the expressions used to create calculations within Power BI, expressions and calculations within Power BI are called measures, and within measures we use DAX to produce us values based on whatever we have filtered on our report. So in the next video we'll get into some basic DAX functions, how we write them, how we create them, and see you on the next one. So let's get into some DAX functions and how DAX works and how we can write DAX syntax. So let's go over to our report view page. So on our left side, click on report view. And let's go ahead and create some measures. So let's go ahead and first select our fact table sales, or whatever fact table you have, and go ahead and then click on the new measure button. So when you select a table, it'll automatically pop up to this table tools button in the top. Go ahead and push new measure. So again, measures are those calculations. Write a DAX expression that calculates a value from your data, right? So it's, instead of saying calculations, we just say measures now within the Power BI world. So when we go to create a new measure, this is what we're going to get. So we're going to get a very similar to Excel, right? We get a data bar to type in a calculation that's going to give us a value. So it's very similar. You should be used to seeing this stuff if you've got a background in any of this stuff, but if you don't, this is kind of where we write our DAX expressions and our syntax to provide us that value that we're looking for. So let's say that we want to count the number of sales that we have made. So what we can do for that is, let's go ahead and type in a name, count of sales. And then what we will do is, if you type in a letter here in Power BI, what it's going to do is pop up that functions that you have available with those letters, right? So A, we've got these, C, we've got these, right? So again, very similar to Excel kind of data interface. When you type in something, it will show you an option of what you can do. And then within Power BI, it also kind of gives you that little description over there if you push that out arrow. So if you scroll through, you can kind of see what these different functions within DAX are able to do for you. But what we're going to want to do is we just want a count of sales. So within Power BI, again, going back to our model we've got a fact table that contains unique sales throughout its table. So every line item on that sales table is a new sale. So what we can do to count the number of sales is we can just count rows on that table. So let's go ahead and do a count rows on our sales table. So again, if you type in just those first couple letters, Power BI's engine will just pop it open for you, and then you can push tab and enter. And sorry, so you see this little syntax here that I did, right? So we've got the name here, equal sign, and then a new line. So again, going back to organization that you'll keep hearing me hark on, organizing your DAX function syntax, again, very important to do. It just allows report viewers or report developers down the line to be able to pick up your work wherever you left off with with no interruption, right? You can just quickly pick up where you left off if everybody is writing in the same kind of formulaic type of syntax, right? It's all unique, or it's all very consistent across the board. Everybody's doing the same thing. You all know how to pick up the same syntax. So the way that we do syntax, the way that I've always taught syntax, is you start with the name of your measure and then enter a new line with your function and then whatever that function's doing. And we'll build on top of this as we go, but just another thing to get used to is that syntax, when you start to develop, not very important at the start, but as you get going again, as you ramp up and things get more complicated, that syntax starts to get more and more important. So great, so let's go ahead and push enter. So then over here on our fact table sales, we can see that we've got a little calculator icon, right? So what that means is that is an icon for a measure. That is a measure icon. So what we can do here is we can then drop this count of sales onto the page. So again, if we just drag and drop, it creates an automatic visual. So it'll just drop that measure into a data point for us. So what this is telling us is our data has a total of 49,000 sales. 49,974 sales have been made within our data set. Awesome. What exactly does that mean, right? We've got a starting point. Now we can build on top of it. And some of the great things with Power BI is the way that you build on top of it is with the model that we made. That's where all of the ease comes in. So then if you just drag and drop something from another table, because of our relationships that we've already set up, it will just pop right in, right? We can automatically just quickly find the number of sales for each location ID, for each client, very quickly and very easily, just like that, with one simple measure, right, which is the count of the sales. All right, so let's get rid of this stuff. Let's just go back to a simple table here and work through a couple more measures. Let's include the company name on there as well. Okay. All right, so now that we have a count of sales, let's do a couple more basic little measures here. Let's go with a sum total value. So we're just going to take the sum of the price. So within our sales table, we have a total price column. So again, our data just came nice and clean for us, so nice and easy. We've got a total sales column, total price column, just easily pop that in there. So once we've got that calculation made, we can easily start formatting our stuff to quickly get our values looking how we want it, right? So once we've got that value calculated, we can again drag and drop it onto our table and then format it really quickly into what we're looking at it, right? Or looking at it for. So this is a currency value, so just go ahead and push that currency. And once you did that, it automatically inserted like 10 decimals, right? We don't want that, so just go ahead and put in that decimals, specify 2 or 0, whatever you want to specify for that value. And there we go. We're quickly whittling down some of the ugliness and making our calculations very quickly and with a lot of value, right? Already we've just got 2 basic calculations and already able to do a lot with just these 2 calculations. Let's say our table did not have a total price column, right? Let's say we needed to create our total price somehow. So let's say we just had a quantity, right? We had a quantity and then a sales ID. And the sales ID exists on, or the cost of each quantity of the product exists on the product ID, right? So we've got a price on our product. Let's say that's kind of our situation and we don't have this total value column. No problem. Power BI can still easily do that. One of the main principles of Power BI is DAX aggregators versus iterators. So what we have used here with a count rows and a sum function is we have used aggregators, right? So what aggregation functions do is they take a summarization of the value we're specifying, right? So we have aggregated the total price column at the client level so that this client has an aggregate total price value of this, right? So that's what these aggregation values do, is they sum up, they give you a summarized value of whatever column of data you're specifying it to. And then we also have iterating functions, which instead of doing a summarization of a column, it does row by row. So let's say on our sales table again, right, we've got total price, or we've got a quantity, and then on our product table, we've got our price. So we know what our price is on our sales by our product ID, but we don't have it on our table, and we know what our quantity is to get us our total price. We don't have our total price value, so we need to find a way to calculate that total price with our relationships and our model. So the way that we do that is we can do a line-by-line calculation with an iterating function. So instead of taking this whole column and summing up the column as a whole, what we can do is we can take this quantity at each line and multiply it by its product ID's sales value, right? So we can do this quantity of 6 times product ID 192, product ID 192's price. So we can do 6 times this to get our total price value. So the way that we do that is instead of using an aggregator function, we can use an iterator. Power BI specifies iteration functions with an X at the end. Total value of orders, sum X. So instead of using a sum value, what we're going to use this time is a sum X. So we're going to take the sum x of our sales table of our, let's do this over our company. So let's take the sum x of our company, client. So let's go the sum x of our client table, and then our expression, what we're going to be doing is taking our quantity. Oh, let's do this. Let's do this over our sales table so we can pull in our quantity, sorry. So we're going to be doing our quantity times our related. So again, we're going to be using a different function here. What this is going to be doing is this will return a related value from another table. So we're taking the sum x. So let's kind of start over here. So we're taking the sum x, which is an iterating function, over our sales table. So each sales table's line item, we're going to be taking a expression of each of those values. And this expression that we're going to be doing is, again, that quantity times the value. But we don't have the value on this table. So we need to grab it from another table. So the way that we can do that is use this related function within the measure. So what this does is returns a related value from another table. So you can use a related value function to get the price. So then again, when you type in price, it will pop up the value that you have an option to use. Right? So again, we're taking our sum on this table using this calculation. So for every row on this table, we will go through this calculation. And so the way that we can kind of just look at that, oh, did I spell this weird? I did. And there we go, right? So we can see that there are many ways that Power BI can kind of get us the same value, just using different ways of doing it. So we've got the same exact value, and let's say like if we didn't have that column of data. So if your data that you're using doesn't have a nice clean total sales value, you can easily figure out a way to still calculate that value to get you the insight that you're needing. So again, so the biggest thing that I want you guys to come away from with this lesson is that there are two main items, or two main DAX engines. There's the iteration engine and the aggregation engine. Most of the time, you will be using the aggregation engine, so you want to focus on these values first. Just understanding the count rows, the average values, the sums, right? Understand the very basic functions, and then once you kind of get an understanding of how you're aggregating columns, then you can kind of get into some of those sum x values and those iteration functions. Because again, they do get a little bit more complex based on the model that you've got working with, but they are, again, very powerful and can solve any type of problem that you have. All right, so hopefully that was a good introduction into some basic DAX functions, and even with just this simple functions, how valuable that can be once that model is set up in that correct way, right? Being able to just drag and drop any other data on there and immediately know kind of those very valuable insights of just a simple sum of orders and counts and values, right? So hopefully that was helpful, and see you guys on the next one. This is going to be another video on organization, this time on measures and how to organize our measures properly. So again, you've been hearing me hark on it a bunch, but again, very, very important step within Power BI, keeping all of our items and different data points very organized so that everybody knows what we're doing and we can continue developing some insightful stuff. So one of the best ways to keep measures organized is through measure tables. So right now, the way that we've been adding measures is directly on a table. So that can mean that this table can get pretty cluttered up, right? So if we're looking for sales table, our sales table is now very cluttered up, right? We've got a count of sales on here, total value of orders, right? Let's say we wanted to do on our client lookup, we wanted to do a count of clients. So a total number of clients that we have in our database, right? Count rows on our client table. And then again, see, so you can just see the same thing on other tables. We can quickly kind of expand these tables, which is kind of messy, cluttered up calculations that we're doing on top of these tables, right? So it's we don't want that. We want to keep these measures and data separate because our measures aren't our data, right? We're doing calculations on top of our data, so we want to keep those items separate. So the way that we do that is let's go ahead and go to our Home tab on our main Power BI screen. Press the Home button, and what we're going to do next is click on the Enter Data button. So when we click on that, what we're going to have is we're going to have a window brought up that's essentially just going to be a blank table. So what we're creating is we're just creating a blank table, right? But what we want to do is name it something that's helpful for you for your measure organization. Again, going back to how I will do it, I will always use 3 or 4 of the same measure groups within every one of my model. And they'll always be the same. I'll always put the same type of measures in each group. Again, just so that I know where all of my stuff is between any of my models that I'm building anytime in the future. So the one that I'll start out with is base measures. So this is just going to be my base measures. So those ones that we just created, right? The ones where there are no calculate statements, no filtering. It's just a function on a column. So I'll put everything like that into base measures. And then I'll go through what we do next. So once you get that data entered, go ahead and enter data, name that table, and then push load. So when you push load, what it's going to do is, again, just creating you a very basic table. It's just an empty table with a single column of no data in there, right? What we then want to do is we want to move a measure into that. So we want to make this table a measure group as opposed to a table of data. So if we click on one of those measures that we created earlier, we go up to the top left, click on Measure Tools if it didn't pop that open automatically. And then what we want to make sure is we want to change its home table, and we want to put it in that measure group that we just created. So in its home table, you can see that it's currently set to the fact table sales, which means that that's where it's going to show up under, right? This count of sales shows up under our fact table sales. Again, we don't want that. We don't want our tables of data cluttered up. So if you click on that home table dropdown, you can see that this has all of our other table options of where we can move this measure to. We just created that base measures group for this exact purpose, so let's go ahead and move it in there. And once you do that, you can see it's moved up there, right? So now it's out of the sales group. And then once we've got value, once we've got one measure within our base group, you can't delete this column until you've got a measure in here. Let's go ahead and delete the column 1 within that table we set up. And take a look at this table icon when we do this. So when I press yes, this icon is going to go from a table icon to a measure icon. There you go. So now we've got a table group. We just created our first measure group, a measure group. We just created our first measure group that we can now store all of our measures in so that our tables stay nice and organized with just our data. So let's go through that same practice with these other values here. Just clicking on the measure, the home table, and moving it up to the base measures table. So great. So we've got all of our base measures into the group that we wanted on. Let me go through the other measures that I will always go ahead and create here, or the other measure groups that I'll typically create. So we've got that base measures. On top of that measure group, I will go ahead and do calculated measures. Calculated measures is typically my dumping ground for almost everything. Calculated measures are what I will build off of with my base measures. And again, I'll typically put, this is going to be my bulk of measures go into that calculated measures group. And then one other one I'll do, though, on top of calculated measures, so I don't put everything in there, is time intelligence measures. Great. So now we've got our tables with our measure data in there, right? But we don't have them as measured columns yet. So let's go ahead and just create some measures here so that we can change these tables over to a measure. I don't need to do anything with time intelligence yet, so let's just go ahead and dump a measure in there and delete this guy so that you can be a measure group. And for calculate. So let's get into one of the main functions of DAX that you will be using throughout your DAX career. So one of the main functions that DAX uses is the calculate function. So let me open up a measure and show you what calculate does. So what calculate is able to do is it evaluates an expression in a context modified by filters. So in my next video, I'll go through exactly the different items of context and what kind of context means exactly. But for right now, we don't need a perfect explanation of it. So just with calculate, what we're able to do with calculate is we are able to build on top of previously designed measures and then change what filters are being applied to those measures. So we're able to change either the relationships that are used, if it's being filtered by something, if we have some other measure that equals some value for some context, right? So there's immense amounts of things that calculate opens up the world for. And the way that calculate works is we type in an expression, so one of those measures that we were using, or if we want to just type in a new expression. So if we want it, we can do, let's go with count rows sales. So we can either do calculate and then calculate a function. So we can type in the exact function, but that's not best practice. What best practice is whenever you're designing measures, is it's very, very good to build on top of measures. So keep it very simple within each of your measures and just layer it up, right? So start with a base, start with that count rows measure. And then once you've got that count rows measure, instead of having to type in the count rows function or expression again as a whole, just reference the measure, right? So just go calculate count of sales. And now we're doing that same count rows function without having to type the expression again. So we're building on top of our base, and then what calculate allows us to do is apply some filters to that base calculation, right? So it's very, very powerful stuff. So let's say that we only want to count the sales for this client, right? For client this guy. So the way that we can do that is just go with this filter statement within our calculate. We can just go name, specify lookup company name, lookup client name, and then equals. Right? So what we're now doing is we're now calculating the count of sales. So we're calculating this column, this value, but we're filtering that calculation down so that only that second statement is true. So only these values are calculated. So if we put that onto the page or onto this table next to our count of sales, you can see that only this one client will show 180 sales. Right? There we go. We got all of our sales. And then if we want to only specify just the client that has those sales, we can then just add up some extra filtering, right? So what we did initially by just having it specified to this is we're counting up all of the sales for companies for all of our sales, right? We're just counting up all of the sales where the company name equals a specific value. But we're not filtering our companies down by that value, right? We're not filtering the company page or the company table by these values. We're just changing the way our expression is evaluated. So within the expression evaluation, we're specifying again the count of sales is only counting this group. So we only get that 188. But then we repeat the 188 through all of our clients because we haven't specified that we want to filter our clients down to that. So again, going to our model, that's just how our model is set up. If we want to, however, filter down the data so that only this individual shows a count, we can then just add some extra function layer, extra building on top of our measure so that it adds a filter to our client table and then filters our client table down by this statement, right? So as opposed to filtering down our count of sales to this statement, we can filter down our client table to meet this statement. So let's walk through kind of an example of that. So if we filter, so within this filter function, another very powerful, most common used function is calculate in use in tandem with filter. So we will calculate our count of sales, and then we will filter our client table. There we go. We will filter our client table. So again, this filter expression, filtering by the table. And then we're going to specify the filter expression that we're going to use. So filtering our client table, we only want to show the count of sales for clients where the client name equals Alexander Group, as opposed to counting all of the sales for the client name Alexander Group. We're now doing it and then only displaying for Alexander Group. Right, and then we can see in that calculate demo, we've only got it shown the 181. And then just going back again to the organization of measures, one of the best tools that I came across with getting started on organizing, I have no idea how to organize. You don't know kind of the best syntax to use. You're not sure how to organize your measures when you're first getting started. So the best way that I kind of found myself doing it is write it however you want. Create the measures however you feel is comfortable for you and how you know to write syntax and how you can read it. However, once you create that syntax, I would highly recommend you copy it, go over to a website called daxformatter.com, paste it in there. You can keep their default settings, and then just press that format button. So what this is going to do is it's just going to give you a nice breakout, again, of that syntax that people, everyone, pretty much everyone who does Power BI development uses syntax very similar to this, right? If not this, it will do it some other way, right? Just some very similar way, so not very many differences. But there are a couple of different options. But again, write it however comfortable you are with doing it, however you can understand your syntax. But once you do create that syntax and then get that measure on the page, I do highly recommend that you go to daxformatter.com, paste it into that little input, and then copy its output. And then again, all you have to do is just go back to your report and paste it in. So you can see just how nice and neat it changes from one to the other, right? It just completely changes how you can read it. It's a lot nicer, a lot easier to be able to understand what you're looking at. All right, so that is the introduction to some DAX calculations. Hopefully that was helpful on how you can get your measures organized after you create some measures, and a couple of different very standard functions, and kind of showing some capabilities of what DAX can do. I'll see you guys on the next one. Next, we will be getting into the context and how exactly context is applied and what it means in the different areas of context in Power BI. In this video, we are going to be going over what context is in Power BI, the different types of contexts, and how you can try to start to understand what context means and how it relates to your Power BI models and reports. So within Power BI, there are a few main context definitions or different types of context. So before we get into what those exactly are, what context is, the way to kind of think about what context is how a value is calculated. So going back to, again, how we want to think about calculations within Power BI is we're calculating by columns of data, right? We're calculating on columns or tables of data. So what we want to do with context is we want to imagine how this cell, going back to reverting back a bit, context is thinking about what went into this cell being calculated, right? So the context of this cell being calculated was its company name is what its company name is, right? So the context of the calculations and of your Power BI reports comes from the values that are being filtered or on your data or on your tables that are providing your data values. So whatever your data values are providing, those values that are being shown is because of the context in what they're being shown as. So let's try to clear up that confusion a bit. So the three main functions are row context, query context, and filter context. Row context we'll go over last. It's a bit less crucial to understand. But so with query context, what query context is it is going to be the type of context that you are applying within your function, right? So just the count rows. So this count rows, count of sales, the query context that we're applying at this cell, right? So the context of this count of sales calculation on this table is the company name. So its query context is the company name. And then there's filter context, which is this type of calculation, which is changing the filtering of the query, right? So we're changing the filter of a certain expression. So a filter context is a set of values in each column based on filter constraints that were applied to those rows or filter expressions. So we're taking, again, just that count of sales where our query context is giving us a value of 40,000, and then we're adding filter context with our calculate filter statement to further filter that measure down to provide a different context for our measure. And then the last kind of context that we'll go over is row context. Row context is it gets relevant when we start getting into some of those iterating functions, like I was talking about with those sum x values or something like that. But row context also comes into play a lot whenever you start doing some calculated columns as well, right? So each value within a new calculated column is not based on any query or filter context. It's based on the row that it's entered on. So you can't have a dynamic calculated column. It's going to be whatever the values are for that row context, right? So again, if we use that sum x value just in a different kind of thought process and add it as a new column, instead of doing sum x as a value, if we wanted to do the quantity times that sale, or times the price to get the total price, we could add that as a new column, and then our row context would be that specific row on the sales line to look up that product to multiply times the sales to get us that total price, right? So that's kind of that third context is row context, which is again going into some of those iterating functions or some calculated columns. So the biggest context parts to understand are query context and filter context. It is a bit complicated and confusing to kind of understand exactly what it means when you're getting into Power BI. So please ask any questions or ask for clarification, and I can probably do another video on this if that's helpful. Or if this one wasn't too great or didn't have any help for you guys, let me know. So again, context is a very, very important part of Power BI and understanding how to create and develop your reports. Hopefully this did provide some value though, and you kind of understand what context means so you can start getting into developing your own reports. Talk to you guys on the next one.
This video is going to be on best practices for report development. So now that we've kind of gone over all of the groundwork for Power BI, we've gone through Power Query, we've gone through how to clean up some messy data, how to set up a model, how to view your data within the data view, how to create your relationships, what relationships look like, when to use different relationships, right? So we've kind of set up all of the groundwork to how we can actually create a Power BI report now. Right, so now we're going to essentially just take really just these very basic measures. We might add maybe a couple more here to the report or into our data, but we're really just going to use very, very basic measures to go ahead and get some pretty looking report that will be able to give us some very good insights with just our very basic data set and basic measures. So during this, we'll kind of cover some of the best practices for how we can get a report to look nice and pretty, super quick, how we can kind of organize stuff, some of the things that I've kind of noticed on report readers and how to best get report readers to get to the best insights that they can. So that's what this course is going to be about. So getting into it, one of the biggest things that I kind of see, especially with courses and some of the other coursework I've seen that's out there, is a lot of people kind of focus, a lot of Power BI developers like to focus on kind of developing for themselves, is what it seems like. So everybody likes to make the report really flashy, and really kind of overwhelming with data, as opposed to giving somebody just the what they need to solve their issue and kind of give them the most valuable insights really quick. So kind of the biggest issue I see is just people don't really develop from a report viewer perspective, whereas typically that's where the value is going to be when your reports are developed, right? Because most of the time you're going to develop these really great reports, but if they've got all of these amazing insights, but you have to dig into it and really know the ins and outs of the report, those insights might not be gotten at, right? So it's really important that like you develop from this report viewer perspective to make sure that that end report is, along with very valuable and insightful, it's engaging, it's pretty, the report viewer wants to come back to get their data again, as opposed to it's too confusing, it looks too crazy, it's ridiculous, but from your side you're proud of it because you got all of these really complicated things solved, right? So it's just important to kind of balance those things between making the report really complicated and in-depth and making it valuable for the report viewer. And so I'll go through kind of some of those best practices on how we can make sure that the reports end up in that valuable state for the viewers. So getting into it, the way I typically like to start out with development for a brand new report is I will typically like to use the setup that I'll typically shoot for is some kind of table, so some kind of data table on the page with visuals to go around it. So I don't like to clutter up the table, or I don't like to clutter up my report with multiple tables. I usually like to keep one data table as the table of data, and then that table is supported by visuals that can give other insights and then filter the table down. That's typically how I go about reporting and developing, right? So what I'll do is I'll again just kind of start with a table. So let's just say this is a table I like. Let's say I want to add a couple of things on this. Let's say I want to add the average sale value, right? So let's go ahead and get that added on here. So let's go ahead and do the average value of a sale. And let's just go ahead and do a divide function here. So this is going to be a new function that we're using. And again, we're just going to use that same kind of method of building on top of our previous measures. So we're going to use our base measures and just build on top of them to get an average sale value per order. So what we want to do here is go just divide the total value by the count. So just a very simple average. We're just taking we can also do an average on the sales order total price column. Right, so a bunch of different ways to do this, but just going to do it this way. Let's go ahead and drop that value in. And let's go ahead and format this as well to $, and let's go ahead and remove decimals. Right, so now we can see that these companies' average order values are as such. And instead of companies on this table, let's throw employees on here. We've got employee on here, so let's throw employee as the data, as the context on this table. So our context on this table has gone from employee. So we've got the employee name currently on here, right? So each of these values, each of these line items, its context within its measure context, so these measures have query and filter context by each of these companies, right? And then if we add on the employee name, now this context, this line context, is the employee name that had sales for this company name, right? So now the context has changed where we've just added an additional layer in the context being employee name. And then now we've removed company, so now we're back to just a single context added onto our measure, but it's the employee name now instead of the company, right? So now we've got the employee as our context with our measures. So each of these values can show kind of employee performance and how they might be measuring up against each other, right? So let's say that's where we want to start with our data table. Great. So after my data table, once I've kind of got an idea of what I want to put on the data table and get analyzing, next, what I'll typically do is some type of date visual. I like to at least have some type of time series visual, so that we can organize our data in some kind of growth rates, or use that time intelligence measure folder so that we can start doing some time intelligence stuff based off of dates to see maybe there's some seasonality stuff, or we can start forecasting based on historicals, right? So a bunch of different stuff with dates is available. So I almost always include a date visual of some sort. So for our purposes, let's go ahead and use a line and stacked column chart. So what this is going to do is this is going to be able to allow us to stack the column with multiple legend values. So let's say if we want to slice each month's total sale values by product, we can do that because it will stack up and then also show the average sale value over time, right? So we can kind of use a combination of what we've already got, again, just these very basic measures, but just display it in different contexts. So instead of our employee context, we're going to display it using date context. And so let's go through some of these things on our date table before we do that. So our date table, we need to go ahead and mark it as a date table before we can start using it as a date table. So very easy way to do that. Let's go ahead and right click on the date table that you've created, and then just go down to where it says mark as date table and click on mark as date table. And then in that little pop-up that pops up, the date column, go ahead and select date. So within that date table that we generated within Power Query in the earlier steps, that is just the date column that we will use. And then once we've done that, let's go over to our Data View tab and select the date table again. And let's go ahead and sort a couple of columns on this date table. So on the date table, the rest of the columns on this table do not get sorted by default. The date column is sorted correctly, but then the rest of the fields are not sorted. So what we need to do is we need to sort those fields. So this month and year column, we can go ahead and sort this by the value. Let's go ahead and, so the way to sort a column is to click on month and year, go to sort by column, click on that, and then within that little drop down, what we're going to be looking for is month in year. Click on that guy, and then now it's sorted. You can see it's sorted when you click it again. It'll be month and year. And then do the same thing for any of these other ones that you want sorted, right? So any of the other and year ones, so quarter and year, again, sort that by quarter in year. And voila. So once we've got that all done, we can now go back to our report page, and let's get that date context thrown onto the page. I typically use month and year. That's just one of my favorite ones to use. It just kind of gives the best kind of summarized context as well as good kind of time frequency as well. It's enough of a summarization as well as there's enough months within a year to kind of give you a good growth rate. So I usually go with month and year for my default top level on most of my time visuals. So now I've got month and year on there. Let's throw in the total value here. Oh, let's go ahead and extend our date table. We've missing some dates. So on our date table, our dates go out to 2022. So let's go ahead into our date table and just extend that out to 2022. Go ahead and load that in. There we go. Now it popped in all nice and pretty. And now that we've got our dates in here, so now what our context is, so again, look at the context of these visuals in comparison to each other. So what we've got here is, let's say we click on this individual. So when we click on this employee, what we're doing with the context on this visual down here is we're applying additional filter context. So we're applying context to this visual that is the person that we've selected. So the context on here, on this visual, whenever we select it, it's filtering this visual by that same context. So it's adding that same filter context that we've just selected here onto the other visuals. And that goes both ways. So if we want to select just a single month, then all of these values will be filtered for the employees' values for that month. So again, we've added that month context into this table's context. So now each of these measures now have an additional filter context to apply when they're doing their expression calculations, right? When DAX is running each of their calculations. They're adding this additional selected filter to those value calculations. It's great. So that's a great kind of sample into how context can work and how it can relate to each other based on the model. So let's keep going further. So after we get this added on, going back to that category, right, for products, let's say we wanted to break that out by products. We can throw in product into the legend. So into the column legend, if we throw in a category from one of our lookup tables, we can now see all of our items are broken out by those certain products. And again, they all filter each other to change that context. So when you click on stuff, everything else will filter. Same thing. So now we've clicked on simply just the electronics category for July of 2021. And in that, that's filtered the other table to also now only include that date with that category being electronics. So we've added that same context that is down here to the rest of our visuals. It's great. So now we are starting to get a nice looking visual. Let's add one more thing. We need to add a line, so some type of trend. So the option that we selected for this visual is that line and stacked column chart, right? So we've got a line that we can throw on here. So a good option for a line value might be the average sale. So let's throw that on there. So once we throw that on there, we can see again, it's just added some extra data to our values. So now we can see kind of how each employee is performing in terms of their average sale value, right? If you scroll through, we can now see how they're doing. Nice, quick, and easy, just like that, right? So then after we get that time visual on there, after I get my time visual, what I'll typically do after that is do some summarized metrics of what we're looking at, right? So just some type of summarization of what we're showing here, because we only have we've got each of the values kind of individualized, but we don't know how many clients we've sold to, how many locations we've been at, how many total sales we did make, or actually we do have that one, sorry, or what the average sales were every day or every week, right? So just some of those summarized metrics we want to throw on here. So let's go ahead and add those. Again, these are very just basic, very basic measures we're adding here. So just location count, and then we will do another count rows. Or sorry, this time we're going to do a distinct count on our location IDs from our sales table. So what this is doing, just like the count rows on our sales count, instead of counting the rows on our sales table, we want to instead count the number of distinct locations that are happening on our sales table. So we will do a distinct count function on the sales table for our location ID. So again, if we drop this onto this table, you can see that our context is 40, so each employee is pretty much selling to all different locations. So that's not very helpful, just showing that there, right? That's just taking up space. But we do still want to show how many locations we're selling to. So let's just throw that on a card at the top. So this is a new card here. Let's format this a bit. There are a bunch of options here to format here. So on the format page of this, format your visual, we will go to the callout section. In the value, let's specify the size of the font. Just go to 12, make it really small. Header also, make that pretty small. And let's reduce our spacing and get it sized down a bit. Alright, there we go. So now after our client count, or our location count, let's see how many clients we sold to. So then within this client count, very similar calculation, just a distinct count on client IDs on our sales table. And let's go ahead and add that to our card. So now we can see that we've got 250 clients. So let's go ahead and filter for a couple of things here. So if we filter for a couple of things, we can start to again see what changes, right? So we've now filtered for, if we hover over our little filter funnel, we can see what we filtered for. So we filtered for April 2021 and the electronics category. So in that electronics category, and then having Amy and Anna selected, they have sold to 4 different locations and 4 different clients, equating to these values, right? A total of 4 sales have been made in those 2 locations, right? Or 4 total locations to those 4 total clients buying electronics. So again, just the filter context is very important to how you can look at all of your data, to how it changes everything. So let's do a couple of other very basic ones here. Let's go with the average sales per location. So out of all of our 40 locations, what is the average of those values? So what we can do here is let's go ahead and do the average sales per location, and instead of doing a divide this time like we've already done, let's go ahead and do another example with average x. So again, this is going to be another iterating example. We will take the average on our values from the locations table. So what the values function does is we are just going to get the unique values across our locations table. So for every value on our locations table, we're creating a virtual table of those locations. And then after our table, the expression that we are going to use is we are taking the average total value of orders, so our average sales value, let's go value. So we're taking that average sales value per location. And again, so we're doing that at each location. We're taking the average of those values. So that's what that average x is doing. So that average x part, you have to look at it again from the iterating function side of DAX. We're iterating through each of the locations, so every location on the locations table that has a total order value, we are getting each of those values and then averaging them out across that. So over those locations, imagine there's a table of locations, and then there's another column within those locations that have the total value orders for those locations. And then let's go ahead and drop that onto our card. And there we go. So the location average for all 40 locations is 2.2 mil. So every location on average has 2.2 million sales made. Or sorry, dollars. Alright, moving on to another nice and nifty one with average X. Another pretty helpful one is the average per month or some time frame, right? So let's go the average, let's go weekly. Average weekly sales count. So how many items are being sold every week? So again, let's do another average X with the values. But this time, the table that we're going to be on is we are going to be on the date table. So this time we're going to take the values on the date table, but not of the date. If we do it by date, that will give us daily. We want to do it by week. So let's go the values of week and year, and then our expression of count of sales. So again, we can see that we are going to be iterating using an iteration function, and then we are going to take the values. So the virtual table that we are creating will have every unique week and year and the number of sales each of those weeks and years have had, and then we're taking the average of those. So let's go ahead and add that onto our card. And there we go. So on average, we are selling 318 orders every day. And every week, sorry. And then if you click on any of these additional employee filters, we can again change the context of that value and see how many each individual employee is doing, or how many each individual month is doing, right? So on each out of April 2022, there are an average of 270, 283 in March, right? So on and so forth. So again, we just change that context. So once we've got those kind of summarized values, we can go ahead and start thinking about what else we want to throw on the page here. So maybe let's also just throw on total sale count. There we go. Let's go ahead back to the card layout and fix some of this formatting. We don't want any commas displayed or any values displayed differently in the unit display. In the sales count, let's make that a comma. Average sales, let's go. All right, there we go. So now our card is looking better. Great, but we still have a bunch of white space that we want to fill up, right? We still have plenty of white space, so what else should we put in here? So what I will do after I've got kind of my basic table and my time context, I'll just try to throw on some other things that will be helpful for whatever the context or problem we're trying to solve. So for us, we're just trying to analyze some sales. So let's go with I like the donuts. Let's go with the donut chart. Throw this over here. And let's do it by, let's throw on, we don't have anything with the products yet, so let's throw the product and subcategory. And then let's do this, order this by the total value of these product sales. Nice, so now we can see this way, now we have the total value of each product sale for each of these values, right? So then if you click on these automotives, you can see down here, that is highlighting only those automotive sales, so on and so forth, right? So it's just another way to visualize the values that are already down here. Instead of seeing them broken out like this, we can have them in a format that is more summarized to get those values here. And then if we want to drill down into that subcategory, we can now drill down and see the exact subcategory, right? So very nice on the donut chart. So all right, that looks good there. And then we've still got some white space over here. So let's go with one more visual. Let's go with a column chart here, or a bar chart. And let's just go with a stacked, because we're just going to go one value on here. We don't have any employee or client context anymore since we removed it for the employee context. Let's go ahead and throw on some client context into this visual. So let's go company name. And actually, let's do industry and then names. Let's see what industries are doing best. And then let's go with the count of sales for who we are selling to most. Perfect. So then same thing with kind of the donut, right? If we click on this drill down, we can then click on one of these industry categories and then drill down and see what client within that industry is doing the best. And again, everything else will filter and add that extra filter context once we have clicked on that item. So we can see that everything is drilling down when you click on that, right? So this is just a very good way, very standard, easy way of getting some very nice looking visuals on the page very quickly. And then just to tie everything up, what I will do to organize it in one final way, give it a little title. And then the final trick, let's make this a bit bigger. The final trick is then adding a blank image. So go ahead and to the insert button, we will add a blank shape. So just go ahead and add a blank rectangle. So click on the shapes and add in a rectangle. And just make it as big as the screen. So add in a rectangle and make it as big as the screen until you can't see anything. Then what you're going to do next is go over to your View tab, and on your Show Panes button, you're going to open up the selection pane. On your selection pane that just popped out, you're going to drag this shape that you just created all the way down to the bottom. So the selection pane is essentially just a layers, right, where things are sitting on your report page. Once you've done that, all done there. We can close out of that selection pane. So once we've got that, we can see we've got this shape color in the background. It doesn't look nice though, right? So let's go ahead and fix that. What we want to do is make all of our items, so all of any slicer or any text box or anything that's just going to be a white background that we don't want to call out as a new unique thing, we want to hide the background. So click on any of those visuals. So if you click on the text box visual, on its format property pane, in its effects, you want to move its transparency all the way up to 100. So move its transparency up to 100, and then its background goes away and it doesn't get in the way, right? And then another little great thing that you can add on to make the report more appealing for viewers is add the visual border. So if you just add a visual border, it again just breaks up your report in a nicer, easier to read kind of fashion. So as opposed to the report reader not knowing where to look or how to visualize your report, you now have got it blocked off nice and easily, very easily for everybody to just hop in, see what they're looking at, what's the focus of the page. And then to cap off this session, what the final thing that we can go over here is themes. So under the View button, if we're still on the View tab, there are themes within Power BI that can just quickly and easily kind of change the look and feel of your report. So if you click on that theme drop down, it's just going to change those default colors that you've got applied, and you can just kind of select one that you like. So whatever colors you like, maybe you can create your own, of course. If you want to go with something that's for your company, custom to your colors, you can definitely do that. But that is also how you can just kind of make it nice and pretty really quick. But oh, let me go one more thing actually before we tie this one up. So then on the table here, one other thing that we can do on the table is some conditional formatting. So I'll go through a quick example with conditional formatting here. Is the way we get to conditional formatting is click on one of those column values, and then there's be that conditional formatting buttons, right? So click on those drop downs, conditional formatting, and then we are going to do a data bar. So there are a bunch of options for conditional formatting. I'm just going to show you a data bar here. We're going to want positive to be green. So what we have added here is we have added a data bar to our total value of orders column so that the maximum value is going to show a full bar of green, right? So we can see who's performing, who's underperforming, just with a nice easy visual added onto the page. Again, just some quick visuals adding some extra value to your report. But all right, so those are some quick little tips on how we can make sure that we are developing in a great, easy to view way for our reporters and the end viewers. Hopefully this helped on getting you guys tips on how you can design your reports effectively, and I will see you guys in the next one. In this video, we are going to be going through how to publish our report and then a quick overview of what the service looks like, Power BI service being where you publish your report to. So now that we've got our report all set up and established, it is ready to be published and starting to be distributed to users. So what we want to do is publish it to the service and then start sharing it through the service so that users can start viewing the report. The way to do that is on the Home tab. Click on the Home tab, and then in the Share little section, there is the Publish button. Go ahead and click on Publish. Save changes. Fix that. Alright, publish and save changes. And then once we save the changes, what will come up will be the options for the workspaces. So once you get it published once you get it saved, the next setup will be the choosing your workspace to publish it in. So whenever you're publishing to workspaces, the best way to kind of again, thinking about organization, going back to the big importance on organization, you want to make sure that you don't just create a new workspace for every new data set and every new report, because it'll quickly get out of control. So you want to just have some foresight when creating those workspaces on, okay, what type of workspace organization do I want? Do I want a single workspace for my data set to be published? Is this just an ad hoc report so I can put it into my into my personal, my workspace? How do I want to organize my workspaces when I'm publishing, before you just start creating a whole bunch of workspaces and a whole bunch of models, right? So just make sure you're wary of that, so you don't make your workspaces uncontrollable and unmanageable, and you don't know where a report lives, who's viewing it from what workspace, and all of that. So I'll choose just the workspace that I'm doing a demo in, so choosing the PBI reporting demos, great, go ahead and select, and it is going to publish up to the workspace you choose. Once it publishes, you will have the option of opening it. Go ahead and just open it up. And once you click open, what it's going to do is it will bring you directly to the service. So it's going to bring you directly to the Power BI report that you just created, and you can now view it. All of that same interactivity that you just saw on the service, you now have in here, or on desktop you now have in here, right? Everything still filters everything. You can click on anything and it all goes down to it. You can drill down, and right, so everything still works the same way. It's just now in the service, not on a desktop file, where you can set up scheduled refreshing and have your data always be live, and viewers can access your always live data. So let's go through kind of what this service looks like, and then we can go through how we can get your report distributed through the service and what best practices are. So again, in our workspace, let's just go home first. So on the home tab, whenever you go to apps.powerbi.com, this is going to be your home tab, right? So you'll have a couple of basic items, some favorites, some recents. We don't need to be in there, right? Not much in there for home. Where we're typically going to be is either in the app section or in the workspaces. So in workspaces on the far left, go ahead and click on that. This is where we will manage the workspaces that we just published to. So let's say we don't have a workspace yet and you publish to my workspace. The way that we create a workspace is very easy. Just open up that workspaces button, click on new workspace, and name it whatever you want. And then in advanced, this is where you have some options where you can set up some different permissions for the license mode of the workspace. So this is where it gets into some licensing conversations, which is honestly a video and a half of its own. So I'll go into that later at a later date. But for most purposes, Pro will be totally fine for almost everybody. You don't have the ability to kind of do everything you can on the free version. You can poke around and develop as much as you want, but when it starts coming to sharing and distributing, you do need a Pro license, and then everybody viewing the report also needs a Pro license. So far for this demonstration, I've just got a demo or trial, so it gives me access to everything, so that's fine. Just got it in there. So great. So once you create your workspace, again, you can then click on the workspaces and it'll pop up. Then after you've created the workspace, the way that you manage access, so let's say we just created a report and we want to share it to somebody. The way that we manage access to that workspace, anybody wanting to view a report needs access to two things. They need access to the data set, so they need access to the workspace where the data set lives, and then they also need access to the report. So if the report is being distributed through an app, they need access to the report through the app, as well as access to the data set that the app is housed in, the workspace. And so whenever you go to workspace access, the way that you can set up that access is just add a new group or viewer and just go ahead and add them as a viewer. So if they just need to view reports, which most people do in Power BI, just go ahead and add them as a viewer. If you've got other people starting to develop on your model that you created, let's say you created a model that is starting to get out to your whole company because you had great success with it, other people want to start developing on your model, you've got other data in there that people can do so, then you can just add them as a contributor or as a member, and everybody can connect to the model that's published in that workspace and start developing and publishing reports to the app, right? So it's very nice to work with, and
then Power BI just released an incredible update that allows you to do Git integration as well. I'll go into that again in another video as well, but collaboration with Power BI is really starting to kick off by being able to manage a single model and have that transfer to the entire kind of data set or reporting ecosystem that your company is starting to develop. But all right, so let's go into our workspace. So going into our workspace, what we can see is we can see that the report that we just published, right? So we just published a report, and with that report comes the data set. So that data set, what the data set means is that is this. So within our Power BI file, we have all of our data, right? That's our data set. The data plus this relationship model. That's kind of the whole data set concept, is all of your data plus the relationship. That creates your data, your Power BI data set. And that's what this is. So what this is this has the ability to set up to be refreshed. Your data set can be refreshed so at any time you can either set it on a schedule or you can set it on a schedule, do it manually, so that any time you have new data, you can have it refresh and update so that data is reflected on your report that is connected to that data set, right? And you can set that up through various settings and gateways. Again, different video, but easy, very easy to set up. And then again, having live data, totally game changing for report development, and BI and analysis, right? Incredible stuff. But all right, so once we've kind of got a understanding of how the workspaces work, what everything kind of looks like, let's go ahead and now get our report distributed. So the next video, we're going to go over how to distribute our report that we just published. See you on that one. Now that we have an understanding of workspaces and a bit of a navigational understanding of the service, let's go through some option of how we can get this report distributed to some end users. So first of all, I will give you the most ideal and most effective, consistent way of getting reports out to users. That is through apps. So Power BI workspaces, within each workspace has the ability to create a single app for that workspace. What the apps allow you to do is, let's go through essentially just a little setup of creating a sample app. So open up that workspace where we just published that report to. Let's go ahead and create an app. Just name it test 1, 2, 3, whatever, name it whatever you want. And so within this setup, we'll create that name, the description, and then so these names and descriptions do appear for users, right? So these are helpful if you are publishing this for an actual user in a group of people. You do want to actually name this something helpful, right? Because this is helpful for people to start engaging with your content. So go ahead and name this something helpful if it's a live report, just for testing purposes, going with that. And then you can add a logo. Again, people will see this, and a theme color for your app. So if you have some hex color that your company uses, you can go ahead and take that hex color or change it to some default color here or whatever. So contact information, what this is going to do is if anybody requests access, it will send those access requests to the individuals listed. So if you just want to have it go to one person, the person creating the app, yourself, you can have it there. You can have it be contacts from the workspace, so it can just be who do you want to contact within the workspace, or you can have it contact specific individuals. Usually if I have it contact specific individuals, I'll either do myself, since I'm usually the one doing the access, or the supporting groups, like a support at your company name, right? So if they're the ones who are responsible for managing access and setting up access or getting people licenses, right? Maybe it's a good idea to have them be the contact point. But again, I'll just do myself, show app publisher, and for global app settings, install this app automatically. That's just, especially if you're doing internal apps, just push that button. It just saves an extra step from a report viewer perspective. They just need to push an extra couple steps if you don't do that. So go ahead and do that if it's all internal stuff. Hide app navigation pane, totally up to you. I'll let you guys know what that is. You can see what that looks like. And then allow users to make a copy of the report in the app. I usually don't select this because if people are making copies of a report, it's almost better to do that from the workspace. If they don't have access to the workspace, why are they doing it through the app? Are they able to develop? Do they have the capability? So this is almost too much permission for me, in my opinion, but again, your option. If you want to allow that to go there, go for it. Support site, again, just kind of another contact information thing. If you're building a whole ecosystem, you can put like a SharePoint site for how to use this app or something, right? All right, so we've got all of that initial stuff set up. Let's go to next. On next, so we are on, that was step 1 for setup. We are on step 2 for content. So let's go ahead to add content, and we will go ahead and just click on that checkbox for what we just created. So we just published that link, or just published that report. So go ahead and click on the checkbox for that report that you want to add to the app. Go ahead and click add, and let's go to the next step. So on step 3, this is where we will set our audience. So in the audiences, we have, this is another kind of layer on top of workspace access management. To manage report access, you can also do that through the apps, right? And so a great way to be able to manage, super efficient way to be able to manage reporting access is you can give everybody access to a data set, right? So give everybody viewer access to just a data set workspace where there's no reports or anything in there other than the data set. And then whoever's developing, they connect and build on top of that data set and then publish to a different workspace, to a, let's say, live reporting workspace. And then that live reporting workspace is where everybody else has access to view the reports. And then so instead of having access to every single report, let's say we've got some financial data on some reports. We don't want people to see salaries or commissions for some people. We can create a new audience for the finance team. And then instead of having to manage multiple models and create different models so that only specific report viewers can see only the finance reports and then only other specific viewers can only see activity reports, you can just have one big model for the whole company, manage the access through the apps and through the workspace, and then it's easy to just have everybody develop on one uniform model and then manage access through audiences, right? Super nice, super easy and quick way of doing it. And you can have, there's no limit to these audiences, right? If you can just keep going with new audiences. It's just additional things to manage once you start getting down that road of additional audiences. Again, just that organizational thing. So very nice, clean way of organizing your stuff. I would say by far the best, most efficient way of doing it. Dataset, workspace, another workspace for a sandbox reporting app, so for development stuff, another workspace for live reporting apps, where all of your live reports that everybody in the company who is viewing reports, they get access to that one. Only developers and kind of people in report development progress get access to the sandbox. And then you give everybody access to the dataset workspace in view permission. So everybody can view the dataset, which gives you permissions to the app, give people permission to the various audiences within the app that they have permission to view. Boom. Right, so that's the best way to manage. So once you get here, once you set those audiences up, go to publish. Once you publish your report, there you go. You've got your link, and that is the link that you just sent to people, right? So let's go ahead to, if you go to incognito, you have to sign in, so you have no reason to go there. So again, if you just open up a new tab, copy paste that in, you go to that app, right? So we've named it that, Power BI reporting demos. We didn't give it any demo icon, and we chose the blue theme, right? So we've got a blue theme here, icon, and all of that. So again, this is how you can kind of share that report. Just share that link that you just got from after publishing the app to all of the report users. Again, only caveats, you got to have workspace to that app audience and then also the underlying data set. And again, if it is in a pro workspace, viewers also need a pro license to view it. If it is in a premium per user workspace, viewers still need a license. Viewers need a premium per user license to view any reports built on a data set in a premium per user workspace. If you have a workspace, if you have a data set in a premium capacity workspace, report viewers do not need a license to view it. So when I was going through it, this was very confusing to me. I got very confused and went down the wrong path multiple times. But I'm going to say that one more time. If you have a pro workspace with a data set published to a pro workspace, report viewers of any kind also need a pro license. If you publish to a premium per user workspace, report viewers in order to view any report built on that data set published in premium per user, also need a premium per user license. If you publish a data set to a premium per capacity workspace, the $5,000 a month option, report viewers do not need a license to view content. So let's go through the kind of options, the other options outside of apps. So if you're in the workspace and you click on your report, so we select the report, the other options that we have here are we can share. So we can share in an email, we can share in links, we can embed in PowerPoint. But again, whenever you view or send it, they still need access and the license and permissions to all of the correct things whenever you share these ways. So even if you share this way or email it or Teams it or PowerPoint, they might have a screenshot. They might be able to get a screenshot of something in an email or something, but it's not going to be able to give them access to that report unless they have the proper licensing and access. The only way that somebody can get into a report without having a license or access, and the report and dataset are not published in a premium per capacity, is publishing to web public. So this is an admin setting that needs to be turned on within your Power BI tenant. But if you do and your company is comfortable and you are comfortable with sharing a report that has been developed in a public link, then that would remove the reliance on any licensing for report viewers. And the kind of a nice little workaround that I was able to see with this option, the only kind of workaround that I've seen with some licensing with Power BI and Microsoft is if you do want to do some like client facing analysis. Let's say you have a big database and you have a bunch of clients within your database and you sell to a bunch of these clients, but you've never been able to analyze that data before. You are able to create a data set with that client data and then use this publish to public link, but publish it behind a SharePoint site that those clients get access to. Right? So there are some workarounds where you can kind of create some data for client-specific data without the need to pay $5K a month, so report viewers don't need to have a license, but then also still having it secure from a client side where people still need credentials in order to access that public Power BI link, right? So there are some pretty funky workarounds if you do want to get fancy with it with this public link. But then other than that public link, we've got a website or portal page. You can embed it as well, or SharePoint online. Again, all of these other options other than the public, you still need the proper licensing and you still need the proper access depending on the workspace setting that it is set to between Pro, Premium per user, or Capacity. So hopefully that helped. The service can get very confusing, but if you go through the apps, pretty simple, pretty basic. Everybody can access your stuff. Just set it up with the correct access and stuff. It's very easy to manage if you get it organized. Again, the organization side, again, on Power BI service, very important, of course. Yeah, hopefully that was helpful and can get you started with getting your reports out in front of people. That is going to wrap it up for the Power BI Beginner's Guide. Hopefully you guys found some value in this. Hopefully it can get you started. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments in the comments section. And if you made it this far in the video, I'd like to just say, well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And if you did, that means you must have some like to my coaching style, teaching style. I do have a website out there with full in-depth courses. If you want to kind of extend this 2-hour course into a bigger course, we do have a 9-hour course out there that is kind of focused on beginners as well. So Learn-PowerBI.com is going to be that website. So if you do have any interest in getting more in depth with some of the more techniques or just getting more involved in Power BI, definitely recommend checking out some of the courses on LearnPowerBI.com. Publishing new courses out here, 6-9-hour courses at least once a month, and along with YouTube videos still coming out consistently every week as well. So, yep, hopefully this helped you. And again, if you made it this far, again, just want to say thanks for watching. Again, let me know if you have any comments or anything like that. Happy to adjust how I do videos going forward. And thanks for watching. See you on the next one, guys.